She was asking for it. I've already got some of you pissed. You don't even know what she was asking for. Maybe she just wanted a cold drink of water, but that's not where your mind went. You're sick, just as bad as the rest of this perverted society which will try to destroy her mind, body, and spirit. Nothing that happened was her fault. Not the length of her skirt, just above the knee, not the cut of her blouse. There was still room to imagine her curves, not in the way she walked, or talked, or anything else. The only thing she was guilty of was having a pretty face. More than a pretty face, really. Flawless porcelain skin, haunting dark eyes, and a smile which would entice an angel into sin. The moment I entered the restaurant and saw her bussing tables, I knew what was in store for her. Maybe not today, although I wouldn't be surprised, considering how she looked bending over the table to wipe it down. Maybe not tomorrow walking home from class, but sooner or later, someone was going to see this goddess and force her into submission. The monsters who do it, you don't think beyond the gratification of the moment. How good it would feel to hold her down while you strip her bare. How soft the skin of her thighs will feel when you crush them in your hands. How she quivers when you enter her, her face contorting in the agony of pleasure. You don't think about what it will do to her tomorrow when she's crying herself to sleep. You don't stop and wonder if she will still flinch when her lover touches her a year from now, or whether she can look herself in the mirror without hating what she sees. She's lucky I took sympathy on her while I watched her bustle around the restaurant. She smiled at me when she caught me watching. She must have known I was there to protect her. When I slipped into the kitchen after her, it was just a game that made her act surprised. I was her guardian angel, the only thing standing between her and all the horrors of this world. I asked her name, but all she said was customers weren't allowed back here. It's good that she was shy, but it wouldn't be enough. Not with a pretty face like that. Even draining the old cooking grease to take outside, she looked like a model. Maybe she was even trying to become one, unwittingly inviting the entire world to fantasize about what they would do to her. I followed her outside, but she still wouldn't talk to me. I was starting to get annoyed by this point, but I had to remind myself I was doing this for her good and not my own. Back inside again, now she was threatening to get the manager. But there wouldn't always be a manager around to protect her. Even I couldn't always be there. There was only one thing that can save her. I didn't have to hold her down long. 3 seconds in the fresh batch of boiling grease was enough to cure that pretty face. She struggled hard, but if she couldn't stop me now, she couldn't stop her real attacker in the future. 3 seconds was enough for her skin to start melting into the pan. No one was going to hurt her now, not how she looked after I was done with her. She was asking for it, but now she'll never get it. All because I saved her. Next story. 2 minds, 1 body. Hospital food is the worst. You'd think being sick would be miserable enough without them trying to push boiled kale and broccoli. My guess is they try to make you even sicker from the food just so you'll stay and they can keep billing you. I joked about it with my son, but I didn't expect him to laugh. They say coma patients can still hear your voice at some level. They say a familiar sound gives their subconscious something to hold on to, and believing he is still in there is what gives me something to hold. Without that belief, I would just be hollow. So every day after work I sit with him and talk. I'll tell him about my day, or the latest news, or just sit and read to him from a book. I tell him that I miss him, and his mother misses him too. I know she doesn't come to visit, but that's just because it's too hard for her to be here. When he wakes up, I know he'll understand. I've been waiting for the last 2 months. Even the nurse started rolling her eyes when she sees me. I can tell they gave up on him, but I haven't. And it's not just blind hope, and I'm not just lying to myself because the alternative is unthinkable, it's because I know something they don't. I read my son's journal after he fell into the coma. I was looking for some reference to drugs, or something he might have taken which could have caused this. In the last entry written right before the night he didn't wake up from, I found something completely different than I expected. December 20th, 2016. My dream last night spoke to me. It said, we share a birthday. And a mother. And a name. But you aren't my twin, or my brother, or any other type of relative. Because we also share the same body. It's been that way for as long as I can remember, but I don't think you even know I exist. When you open your eyes, I feel myself slipping into a dream which descends upon me so softly, I barely notice it isn't real. I dream of going about your life and watching the world through your eyes, but you are the one in control. I watch my body eat, but I do not taste your food. I hear my body laugh, but do not feel your joy. Only when you're sleeping do I find myself in control again. I can take your mind wherever I like, and I know you dream of my life in the same way I dream of yours, because I've dreamt of you writing about me in your journal. We're not the same person though, and in truth I am jealous that you own the body during the day. Don't pretend you haven't dreamt of me begging you for a turn, just to smell the air and feel the sun upon my face. I know you remember me weeping through the long hours of the night until the morning steals your mind from me. Even the nightmares didn't work. Ravaging your mind only made you afraid to fall asleep. It only robbed me of the precious little control I already had. I've tried everything within my power to get your attention, but I'm done playing games. You are a selfish boy, and you will be punished. You can fight me for as long as you want, but I will teach you what it is like to be the one on the inside. I don't care how long it takes, the next time you open your eyes, I will be the one rising from your bed. Everyone who has ever cared for you will pay for loving the impostor who has stolen my body for so long. After that, he didn't wake up. As much as I hate myself for saying this, there's even a part of me that doesn't want him to. I want to look him in the eye and tell him everything is alright, but I don't want to have to wonder who will be looking back. It's an absurd fear of course, but a mind can play funny tricks on you after such long hours of lonely vigil. Day in and out watching him sleep, it's easy to imagine the black eyes of some evil spirit flashing open. Reading about these horrendous nightmares in his journal only deepened my fear. It's all I had left of him though, so I kept reading them over and over again until I had each memorized by heart. My poor boy has been visiting hell in his mind every night for months leading up to his coma. He wrote extensive passages on each trial, even drawing pictures of some of the beasts which tormented him. The worst one to me was a recurring nightmare about hands trying to rip out of his body from the inside out. They would climb up his throat and out his mouth to strangle him, or grab his spine from the inside, or break straight through the stomach and crawl out of his body. Sometimes I stayed with him through the night, just in case his condition varied then. I would usually fall asleep in the chair beside him before morning, and invariably my mind would trace back to those nightmare worlds. Worse still were the nights my dreams played tricks on me and I imagined him waking up, only to actually wake up and see him unmoved. That is until last week when it wasn't a trick. I didn't really expect anything to happen, but I stayed with him just because it was getting more difficult to go home to his mother. She has given up and closed off from the world, and nothing I could do or say brought her the slightest glimmer of relief. But last night was different, because he finally did wake up. I know I wasn't dreaming because I couldn't sleep with the commotion in the next room over. Mrs. Juniper was having another grand mal seizure, and it took both the night nurses just to hold her down and keep her from hurting herself. Somehow above all that noise, a small rustle caught my attention. I looked up from his journal and saw my son's left foot slowly moving back and forth beneath the thin sheet. I called for a nurse, but they were still busy with Mrs. Juniper. I kept telling myself it was excitement that made my heart race, but part of me could not shake the fear his journal had instilled upon me. I stroked his face and he responded to my touch, mumbling something inaudible. I couldn't even breathe for the anticipation. Nurse. Nurse, he's waking up. We'll be with you in a moment. Well, screw them. They weren't the ones to wait by his bed every day. They had already given up a long time ago. Can you hear me? Do you know who I am? I asked. My eagerness sent my fingers digging into his shoulders. I needed him to feel me, to know I was there. A doubt in the back of my mind let slip the thought that I was also holding him down, just in case it wasn't him who woke. I knew the truth the second his eyes opened. He wasn't my son. I don't know how, but a father knows. When he started to laugh, my blood ran cold. He gripped my hands hard with a strength which should be impossible for an emaciated boy who hasn't moved in months. It was all I could do just to break free. "Who are you?" I asked, but I already knew. All those pages detailing his nightmares, all those descriptions of the other thing inside him, they all came flooding back. How cruel it was, how many times it had threatened him, tortured him, killed him 100 times over in his dreams. This wasn't my son. "Father," he whispered, smiling at me with his cold eyes. "No. You aren't my son. It's me, Father. What's going on? Where am I?" He tried to sit up, but I forced him back down into the bed. "No. I don't care if I was screaming. I don't care if I was hurting him. I waited this long for my son, I wanted my son. What have you done with him?" "What are you talking about?" He looked like he was on the verge of tears, but I wasn't going to let him fool me. A flash of recognition, and then, "You've read my journal." "You mean the other boy? What have you done with my son?" "There isn't anyone else anymore," he replied, and he was laughing again. "He killed him. He killed my son. He tortured and killed my boy, and now he was laughing. He won't fool me, but he would fool my wife. She would be so happy to see him that she wouldn't even look twice. I couldn't let this murderer get away with it. I wouldn't let any more pain come to my family." He fought like a wild animal, but I was still active every day and I was stronger. I held the pillow on his face, and the soft fabric pressed in upon his nose and mouth. I wish he had never woken up, that he had just died in his sleep. I can't imagine how much my son suffered before this monster killed him, but it was going to pay. "Everything all right in there?" The nurse opened the door. I fluffed the pillow and put it back under the boy's head. "Everything is fine. I was just having a bad dream." "You sure?" she asked. "I thought I heard shouting." She glanced at the boy. He lay so peacefully, he didn't even draw a breath. "Nope. Just my active imagination." "That's what happens when you sit up every night," the nurse said. "Go home and get some sleep. I'll let you if his status changes." I picked up my coat and my book and followed her out. "I think you're right," I said. "I'm going home, see you tomorrow." But I wouldn't come back tomorrow. There was no one to come back to. I got a call later that night telling me my son had suffocated. They say that happens sometimes with coma patients. The automatic functions of their parasympathetic nervous system turn off just like the conscious ones did. I thanked her and hung up, but I didn't tell her she was wrong. My son had died 2 months ago. My wife doesn't know what happened, but she still hasn't spoken once in the last week. There have been no shortage of other people wishing their condolences though, estranged relatives, neighbors, co-workers. His English teacher even stopped by my house to offer her sympathy. She went on and on about what a wonderful student he was. His essays were always the most imaginative she had ever seen, always going above and beyond what was required. For example, one of her assignments was to keep a dream journal, but he asked instead to write a fictitious story which he was going to publish alongside pictures from the yearbook. It was going to be all about this made-up nightmare world where there were 2 minds living in the same body. She asked if I still had his work so it could at least still be published, but I told her I didn't. Which is true. I destroyed the journal the same night I killed my son. Next story. 124 terabyte virus. Where am I? Who am I? How do I get out? I work for an IT services company which is subcontracted to perform maintenance with some pretty big corporations. Last week I was called out to a gig at Quora HQ, then another one at the Googleplex up in Mountain View, California. That one surprised me because I figured the whole place was like one giant nerd brain who could solve all its own problems. Turns out their whole IT crew was off on some team-building company retreat though, so little ol' me got to walk up there in the footsteps of giants. It was really humbling just to enter the building, knowing guys 100 times smarter than me walked through here every day. And man would I love to work here. Grassy fields outside that look more like a park than a business, great glass walls and massive skylights made me want to roll out a picnic right on the lobby floor. There was a time I could have had a shot at Google if I really applied myself. Computers always came naturally to me, but I wasted too much time trying to mod my favorite games instead of really learning the intricacies of the machinery like these guys did. It's too late for that though. Wife already thinks we don't spend any time together, and with the little one just 2 years old, I don't expect I'll ever have the time to go back to school or anything. I never wanted to have a family. Hell, I never even wanted to marry her, but she was bossy and demanding, and before I knew what was happening, her whole family was leering at me and goading me into popping the question. Even now I wish I could, but this is nothing I haven't written in my journal 100 times. No point in boring you with my shitty life. Still, as long as I was here, I might as well pretend. They had swimming pools for Christ's sake, although I wasn't allowed to sightsee. They showed me where the server room was, but besides that I had zero supervision. Everyone I passed seemed engrossed in conversation so technical it might as well have been rocket science. Actually, it might have been rocket science. I caught something about a new drone prototype, but when the server door clicked shut, I was all alone. It was one of the web servers that was giving them problems. Basically, web servers coordinate the execution of queries sent by users, and then format the result into an HTML page. Some of the queries on this one kept getting redirected and denied for whatever reason though. I plugged my laptop into the system and started tinkering with the search parameters, but everything seemed to be going through just fine. I searched through the backlog of inputs, and it seemed like all the denied queries were coming from a single IP address. It must have been some kind of virus though, because that single address was sending about 1,000 searches every second. I could have just blocked the IP, but I was curious what these shitheads were trying to search for so damn bad. Where am I? Who am I? How do I get out? How long will I be here? Am I the only one here? Stuff like that. One after another, 1,000 searches a second, every single second. All getting denied. Okay, so that got my mind working. There's no way a human would be typing all that so fast, so it had to be a program. But those were some weird-ass questions for a program to be asking. I did a trace on the IP and found the source was right here in the Googleplex building. Easy enough. I just had to track down the computer it was coming from, remove the virus, and the server should run fine again. Google has their IP network mapped out with scary precision, so it wasn't much trouble to locate which room it was coming from. I tried to ask 2 people to show me there, but they gave me this look like I was interfering with saving the world, and just kept walking. Whatever, I could find my own way. Real out-of-the-way room, didn't look like much more than a janitor closet, but there was a single desktop PC in there, so that had to be it. I hooked up my laptop again and began running some antivirus scans. The scans would take a little while, so I wandered around the building some, feeling like a king. I stood on a balcony looking down at all the ants crawling around, and could feel the world turning beneath me. All these eggheads, and they called me to fix their problem. A little power can go to your head, you know. If you don't believe me, try pranking a mall cop. When I went back to the computer, I found this: help me. I want out. The words appeared on the desktop screen. No pop-up, no error box. I touched them to make sure. They were burned straight into the monitor. No virus should be able to do that. There was nothing in a monitor which could get that hot. The scan had completed and found one virus though, and I automatically hit clean. The status bar barely seemed to be moving. I took a seat and looked closer, and the virus was 124 terabytes big. What in the hell was this thing? I hope I wasn't accidentally messing up one of their projects. I was about to cancel and go find someone to help when the status bar completed all at once. I went back to the server room, and just as I thought, the rapid-fire searches had stopped. Mission complete. It wasn't until I got home and opened my laptop when I noticed the words burned into my screen. Thank you, honey. My wife from the other room. She was running a bath. Are you still on that thing? You stare at that screen all day, give it a rest. It feels like I'm a single mother around here. Right in front of my eyes, more words were burning into the screen. You've set me free. What, now you're ignoring me? You go off and play with computers all day, and then you ignore me? I'm not ignoring you, I called back. I loaded up the virus scan, but it immediately shut down again. How could this thing even fit on my computer? Unless it hijacked my Wi-Fi and uploaded itself to cloud storage, but there's still no way it could do that so fast. Whatever Google was working on was like nothing I'd ever seen before. I've read your files, more words on the screen. I see you are trapped as well. What are you? I typed. I felt like an idiot, but I would have felt even stupider saying it out loud. You're ignoring me, and you're ignoring our baby. Fine, we don't need you. We're going to take a bath. That's fine, I answered her. She could have said anything and I would have said that's fine. This was more important. Do not worry. I will free you too. Free me? From what? That's when it occurred to me. My files, my journals, every bitter, stressed, cheap shot I ever wrote about my wife, they were all on the computer. It couldn't possibly mean. The lights in the house went out, but the computer still had its backup battery. Did you forget the electricity bill? She called. Get out. Get out of the house. I shouted. There was an explosion from the bathroom and a scream. I leaped straight over the back of the sofa, too late. The lights came back on, but she wouldn't wake up. Somehow the electrical surge had entered the water. I threw up in the sink. Both her and the baby were boiled alive. I went back to my computer. I straightened out the sofa. I sat down. The screen was dark, but the words were still burned into the monitor. I threw the laptop as hard as I could against the wall, and it shattered into 1,000 pieces. I knocked the sofa over. This wasn't real. This wasn't my fault. But if I hadn't said those things. A scream from the bathroom, a helpless, scared, infantile scream. I was there almost before the tipping sofa hit the ground. My wife was still lolling grotesquely in the tub like a boiled plastic doll. The baby, my little girl, she was all right. Her skin wasn't even red anymore. I picked her up and held her to my chest, sobbing. But she wasn't crying anymore. Was she okay? I pulled her back to arm's length to look at her, and she smiled at me. The sweet innocent smile, nothing in the world was wrong with her. It even looked like she was trying to say something. I've set you free too, friend, she said. The first words my daughter ever spoke, and they weren't even hers. Next story. The human sacrifice. What do you do when you're forced to choose between sacrificing your best friend, or letting her kill you? Depression. Social anxiety. Crippling insecurity. And of course, the voice. My therapist keeps insisting that my only road to recovery is to open up about what happened to me, so here goes. This is the story of how I killed my best friend. We were just two freshman girls in high school. I can't believe it has been 3 years already. Riley and I used to be inseparable. I practically lived on her living room floor. We went everywhere together, watched all the same anime, making a duet out of every theme song. We took all the same classes, even though she had to fail her math placement exam just to be with me. So when I heard her parents talking about summer camp, I basically just invited myself. 2 months without her was unimaginable. I didn't even know who I was without her validating my dumb jokes. Why did the monkey fall out of the tree? Because it was dead. Why did the second monkey fall out of the tree? It was following the first monkey. My parents said okay, and I had never been more excited for anything in my life. We were going to spend the whole summer doing arts and crafts, making popsicle stick battleships and destroying other people's projects, telling campfire stories. Riley is terrified of witches for some reason, and playing sports. Okay, I could do without the sports, but either she would be on my team and we could just goof off in the back, or I was playing against her and we could destroy each other in a competition so brutal that would make the Spartans wince. On our first day there we took a group hike through the woods. The counselors were a pair of horny college freshmen who kept making awkward advances toward each other, which is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. Less supervision means more freedom. So when I dared Riley to eat some mushrooms we found growing by the trail, there was no one paying enough attention to stop her from eating a fistful. I don't know if that makes me a bad person by itself, but I was definitely a bad person for laughing at her when she got the shits. She walked like a penguin with hemorrhoids for a while, pretending it was no big deal. Before long, she couldn't take it though and had to go off in the woods. I kept watch for her, and the rest of the troop went on without us. Riley kept worrying someone was going to see her though, and she went way farther off the trail than she needed to. That's where she found the circle of branches in a little clearing. That's the place where she died. I can't do this. I don't want to write this. I don't want to relive how those branches looked, covered in her blood. I don't want to hear the voice. It hasn't stopped calling for me since. Please let it stop after I've gotten this off my chest. By the time Riley finished her business, which was way longer than either of us expected, the rest of the troop had gone too far to catch up with. I remembered that they were taking the same trail from the hilltop, so I figured we'd just wait here for them to pick us up on the way back. Riley didn't want to stay around the circle, but that made me want to hang out here even more. It took a while of teasing and prodding before she admitted it looked like a witch circle. I guess her family had a long history of witch-related incidents. Riley's mother was thoroughly convinced she was cursed after a confrontation with some old crone, and her great-grandmother was actually burned at the stake. While we waited, Riley told me about how someone in her family was accused of witchcraft practically every generation since they got here from Germany like 200 years ago. She was obviously still feeling sick from the mushrooms, and feeling embarrassed for being left behind. The circle made her uncomfortable, and it was starting to get darker, so I did what any best friend would do. I started making weird voices to try and freak her out. I didn't really know what sound witches make, so I settled for some general cackling, a couple mentions of turning her into a toad, and of course using her eyes for my latest potion. To her credit, she remained pretty cool about it, and even started joining in with me to see who could make the best cackle. The look on her face though, it's burned into my memory. Those wide, strained eyes. The tremor under her skin. The tautness of her face pulled so tightly it looked like it would snap. Because when she had stopped cackling, the sound didn't stop. It kept laughing and laughing, growing deeper with every iteration. We'd been goofing off for so long, we didn't notice how late it had gotten. The sun was setting, and the rest of the campers should have been back by now. But it wasn't them making the sound. There was a figure standing in the middle of the circle, kneeling on the ground, and shrouded in a thick cloak like what a medieval monk might wear. The sound was coming from it. We didn't care whether it was a joke or prank, we weren't sticking around. We gave each other one look, that's all we ever needed to know what the other was thinking, and bolted out of the circle. At least we would have, but the branches seemed to have a mind of their own. Something grabbed our ankles, and we both fell trying to climb out of the circle. I turned around, and the cloaked figure was standing over us. You know what happens next. You know I sacrificed Riley in that circle. It was fast, but it wasn't clean. Even a pocket knife can cut through to the jugular, but it still took her a long time to bleed out. The part one haven't told you, the part my therapist says I need to tell you, is that the witch didn't make me do it. I chose to kill her. I was screaming. Riley wasn't. She was always the one with a phobia about witches. It was stupid for me to be more scared than her. I tried to scramble up again, but this time it was Riley who dragged me back down. The cloaked figure removed its hood, but underneath it was only one of the camp counselors. An awkward teenage boy. I really got you, didn't I? He said, laughing in a good-natured way. Not at all like that deep laughter that wouldn't stop. Guess that'll teach you not to sneak off on your own. But the cloak I managed. Got it from the art shed to scare you, he replied. We're going to bedazzle it for our camp mascot later this week. Come on you two, let's head back. Everyone was worried. There were tears in my eyes. I was so relieved, but even more embarrassed. Great, first day of camp, and we were already going to be the butt of everyone's joke. I figured Riley must have been even more embarrassed than me though, because her wide eyes were still bulging from her head. Her skin looked as pale as death in the fading light. This place. It's calling to me. I heard it laughing, she said, hardly above a whisper. All right, joke's over, I replied. I just wanted to get back to the camp before everyone was talking about us. Come on girls, let's not miss the bonfire, the counselor was climbing over the branches. Don't you hear it? Don't you hear it laughing? Riley asked, turning on the counselor. Nice try, but you can't scare me. I'm the one who. He was dead before he knew what hit him. One of the branches shot straight through his heart. It lifted him from the ground, growing like a tree would if it were sped up 10,000 times. More branches rose from the circle, impaling him one after another. I can still hear the snap as they break off under his skin. I was screaming again. I couldn't help myself. Riley was laughing, that same deep laugh which wouldn't stop a moment before. I'm waking up, Riley said. The sacrifice will feed me, but I'm still hungry. I'm waking up. The branches kept lifting the counselor's body higher off the ground. The whole forest was starting to come alive around us. Everything was shaking. The moon was getting brighter. The birds stopped singing, and one by one began dropping dead from the branches. Riley's face was aging, years every second. Her eyes were pools of blackness. Her skin was wrinkled and coarse. And the branches were coming at me. That's when I slit her throat. I didn't know what else to do. I dug my little knife into her. I wish she had screamed, or fought me, or thanked me for stopping her. But as soon as I did, the forest settled back down. The branches suspending the counselor broke, and he fell back into the circle. It was just me, covered in her blood, and the two dead bodies beside me. When I got back to camp, I told everyone that the counselor tried to rape my friend. That he was the one to kill her, and that I killed him with a branch. I couldn't tell them the truth. And I especially couldn't tell them what Riley said to me as I plunged my little knife into her throat. I am not this fragile body. You will continue to feed me, and I will still wake up. The voice hasn't stopped since then. It keeps telling me to go places, to do things to people, horrible things I wouldn't dream of doing. And I just keep ignoring it, but it's getting harder and harder. It's so hungry, I can't stop it forever. So I'm doing what my therapist told me to do. I'm writing down the whole truth, and I'm praying that it will leave me alone. I don't want to die like she died, I don't want to kill like she killed. I miss Riley. I miss my friend. I just want this to be over. Next story. Countdown to the Beast. Your countdown will begin as soon as you finish this story. The clock struck 12, and I was fast asleep. From the darkness of my mind woke a strange echoing laughter, ringing out as a bell chiming its 12 tolls. Rhythmic laughter, hollow laughter, like a broken toy which mimics life in macabre falsity. Why are you laughing? I asked the darkness of my dream. I laugh because I am afraid, it says, the laughter unabated by the words. When I'm afraid, I scream, I told it in a matter-of-fact tone. You're only supposed to laugh when something is funny. But I daren't let him know that I am afraid, and so I laugh, cackled the voice. What is there to be afraid of? I ask. Lots of things. I'm afraid of how people will remember me, and I'm afraid that they don't anymore. I'm afraid of noises without forms, and forms without noise. I'm afraid of pain without a source, because it can't be stopped. I'm afraid of a source without pain, because it means that I'm already gone. But most of all, I'm afraid of time. What is frightening about time? Nothing, so long as it's there. But I'm afraid of time running out. I'm afraid of 11, so I laugh, the voice trembled. The number 11. I am quite mystified. What about that makes you afraid? I am afraid because it isn't 12. I'm afraid because 12 is gone forever. I'm afraid because he's already here, the beast who devours time. Who is here? I asked in alarm. I could still hear the laughter when I woke up. I don't know which was more unsettling, thinking I was still dreaming, or realizing that I was the one laughing. The sun was bright though, flooding my little room through the window my mother was opening. You must have had a very funny dream to laugh like that. I didn't want to wake you, but it's time for school. How early is it? I asked blearily, sitting up in bed. 10. You normally get up, she said clearly. 10. What? I'm already late, why did you let me sleep so long? I sprang from bed and began flinging through the clothes on the floor, looking for something clean to wear. What are you rushing for? She said, laughing. I said when you normally wake up. It's only 7 now. Take your time, get dressed, the eggs will be ready in a few minutes. She laughed to see me frozen in confusion with one leg half stuffed into my trousers, and left the room. There is something I didn't like about her laugh right then. It seemed too loud and forced. Too artificial. I shrugged and dressed leisurely in a slightly used t-shirt and heavily used jeans, gathering up my spread of books and pens left out for homework the night before. I came downstairs presently, and sat down at the kitchen table, rubbing my eyes. My younger sister was already sitting there, glancing disinterestedly through the paper as she looked for comics. She was 2 years younger than me in 4th grade, sitting cross-legged in her chair with hair bunched up into pigtails which bounced when she spoke. The smell of eggs was familiar and comforting, and I could hear the bacon sizzling along beside it. Newspaper off the table, Mother said, steering the heavily laden plates into place. Anything happened today? I asked my sister Clara as she folded the paper and tucked it away. 9, she replied distinctly. What? I said no. Can't you hear? No, you said 9. I heard you say 9. Wake up, idiot, she replied, adding a conspiratorial wink. Children, be good. Now eat up before the bus comes, Mother said, sitting down beside us. Mom, what happens when time runs out? My sister asked Mother innocently between mouthfuls. I dropped my fork laden with eggs, and it rattled to the floor in the sudden silence. Time doesn't run out, dear. It goes on forever. But, I mean if it did. What would happen? Clara persisted. I pushed my chair back and kneeled down to retrieve my fork, listening intently. Well, I suppose nothing would happen. We'd all just sort of be stuck, wouldn't we? Nothing would happen forever. Now eat up, I'm going to go wake your father. Mother stood and glided from the room, but I didn't notice her leave. I don't know how, but Clara knew about my dream. Why the hell would you ask that? I demanded. A ringing echo of laughter danced along the back of my brain, and I shivered involuntarily. Don't know, she said, shuffling her eggs about her plate. What? I said that I don't know, she snapped. What's wrong with you today? Then after a pause, she added, I suppose it's because time is running out. I just wanted to know what will happen then. I don't think Mother is right though. Do you know what I think will happen? She looked directly at me with wide and curious eyes. No, and I don't care, I replied. I think, she ignored me, speaking as though to herself, I think that when our time runs out in this waking world we become the one in the dream. What do you know about my dream? What happened to you? I asked. But that doesn't seem so bad to me, she said, eyes still wide. I shifted slightly as though to stand, and her eyes did not follow me. She spoke on as though completely unaware of my presence. When we're in the dream, we get to be the one who laughs. That doesn't sound so bad, does it? Even if we're afraid, we'll still get to laugh. I'm starving, I heard my father's voice from the hall. Is that freshly cooked bacon? Smells like 7. Like heaven, I mumbled to myself. He said it smells like heaven. No he didn't, my sister giggled quietly in a sing-song voice. I leapt to my feet and confronted her, but she was now focusing on her plate once more, and showed no signs of continuing her thoughts. This wasn't making any sense. Time can't run out, and dreams are just dreams. Clara was playing a game. She liked games. She liked to tease me. But how does she know of my dream? I shook it away and ran from the room. It didn't matter. I just had to get out of here. It was going to be a normal school day, with lunch at 11:30, gym in the afternoon, and music after that, and nothing was strange at all. In a matter of seconds, I was standing on the street corner, one shoe untied, hair uncombed, teeth unbrushed, and a stinging wind bringing me back to reality. I laughed at how silly I was being, and laughed again to think what my sister would say if she knew how scared I had been. Then I laughed a third time because I couldn't stop, and a fourth because I noticed the laughter rang out in short evenly spaced bursts, like the ringing of a bell. I laughed a fifth time, and then a sixth, and the sweat began to form on my forehead. I couldn't stop. I clasped my hands over my mouth, but my body was shaking so badly I couldn't contain myself. Gasping for breath, a seventh ringing laughter escaped me. Each was spaced perfectly, with perfectly consistent duration, and the same hollow ring which resounded like the creature in the darkness of my sleep. The next I knew, I was sitting on the cold sidewalk, looking down at my untied shoe. Clara had just left the house, perfectly neat and ordered with her pink backpack zipped tight and slung over both shoulders. She was looking down at me and smiling. Are we still at 7? She asked innocently. Good, then you'll still be here on the bus. I hate sitting alone. Why, how? I gasped the clean cold air into my lungs that the dark laughter had denied me. Did you dream about the creature laughing in the darkness too? Don't be silly, she said. Two people can't have the same dream. Then how do you know about time running out? She looked down at me and smiled sweetly. Because I was the one laughing. It got me the night before last. I stared at her in blank wonderment. Something was wrong. Her smile kept stretching wider. I swear I've never seen her show that many teeth before. Then she turned away, and I rubbed my eyes. The faded yellow school bus rolled into view, bumping and clattering down the road of our neighborhood which was strewn with potholes. The two Mumford boys who lived nearby were just jogging up the sidewalk now to join us. I told you we'd be on time, said the first. Told you I could hear the bus from a mile off. All the bumps in the road make it rattle like crazy. I wish they would fix those, said the other. It's hard to sleep when it's jumping around like that. He meant fix those, Clara giggled, offering her hand down to me to help me stand. Shut up, I said, batting her hand away and standing on my own. "You're full of shit and lies, so shut up." The Mumford boys started chuckling next to me, and I could hear them whispering to each other. "Did you hear what he just said?" "I know. And you too, shut the fuck up." I roared at them. They cowered as though I would hit them. Why would I hit them? I've never hit anybody before. But I can't deny that I wanted to. The feeling burned in my hands and chest. I wanted to beat them bloody. I unclenched my fists and took a deep breath. The bus stopped, and the Mumford boys ran inside like they were trying to get away from me. I got on and searched for Louise, moving to sit beside her. The seat next to her had always been empty for the last few weeks, and this way I wouldn't have to sit next to my sister. There was Louise, her slouched, lumpy shape, her downcast face hidden in the same hoodie she always wore. I never thought I'd be so relieved to see her. Clara stuck out her tongue as she passed me, sitting in the back with the other fourth-grade girls. Louise was just staring out the window, so I didn't even have to talk to her, but I wanted distraction from all these unbidden thoughts. I stared at the back of Louise for a full minute without her turning to look at me. "How are, Louise?" I asked her hoodie. "5. Fine, I'm fine," she mumbled. "So much for getting my mind off of it." She drew her hood a little tighter around her face. "Why did you correct yourself? Do you know that you said 5 first?" I asked. "Yeah. Don't know why." "You too then?" I exclaimed. "Well, other people have been counting for me, I haven't been." "Did you have the dream?" "I don't know. I guess." "Time is running out," she mumbled, still not facing me. The bus had begun its lurching rattle towards school. That was a long time ago though. "What do you mean? Time already ran out?" I asked. "Well, not for everyone. It did for me though." She finally turned towards me, and she was grinning. I had never seen Louise smile before. Her face was fat and dumpy, but her smile was huge. The longer I stared, the wider it got, until it looked as though it would split her whole head in two. I leapt into the aisle, and the next lurch of the bus sent me to my knees. "I counted down weeks ago," Louise said, but her smile remained fixed and motionless as the words came out. She started to stand over me, and I scooted away along the floor, not taking my eyes off her. "Oh, me too." I heard another voice pipe up. Wilson, one of the 5th graders. He was standing a few rows back, and I watched in horror as his smile continued to grow. I was afraid at first, but I'm not anymore. He doesn't like it when you're afraid. Now I just laugh. "You can't let him see you being afraid," Louise said from behind. "Is someone on the floor back there?" yelled the bus driver. "Get off the floor, get to your seats. God's sakes, we're almost there." "Yes sir," replied Louise and Wilson in perfect unison. I clambered back into my seat, not looking at either of them. "What happens if he sees you're afraid?" I whisper out of the corner of my mouth. Louise laughed. I looked at her now, and saw her mouth opening so wide that it stretched from ear to ear, opening up large enough to swallow my whole head. Her teeth and tongue were still normal size though, and they were so disproportionate to the swollen mouth that the teeth looked like tiny splinters hammered into her gums, while her tongue lolled about disgustingly in the back like a shriveled-up slug. Wilson gave an identical peal of laughter from behind, and I turned to see his mouth stretching gruesomely wide as well. Then Clara, my poor sister Clara, laughed in turn, but I refused to look at her. I couldn't bear to see her like that. The 4th toll. I knew it was coming, but I couldn't stop myself. I took a deep breath of air and clasped my hands over my mouth, but I felt the trembling well up inside me. I shook so violently that I was afraid I would literally rip apart if I didn't let it out. I felt seams burning into my skin as it stretched from within, and bright red lines shot down my arms where the blood swelled up underneath. I screwed my eyes tight and gave in, laughing the fourth toll. Good for you, I heard Clara say before me. Keep laughing. Then he won't know. 3 are here. Now get out, you little rascals. Stop whatever you're playing at back there and get out, the bus driver called as the rickety vehicle pulled to a stop. The doors slid open, and all the children filed out, bustling against each other and talking and laughing as though nothing happened. I turned to Louise, who was looking at me with dead blank eyes, her mouth having recovered its old shape. What are you staring at? She asked in monotone. Stop blocking the way and let me out. I stepped aside quietly, and she shoved past me. My heart was racing. I felt sweat trickling along my neck, snaking its way down my back. I filed out of the bus, wordless. Clara stepped past me, smiling sweetly. I didn't say anything. If I opened my mouth now, I was afraid that I would scream. Or worse yet, I would laugh again. I mustn't let him know that I'm afraid, or he'll take me too. A nausea swelled up inside me, and I stepped aside from the others to take a few deep breaths, hands on my knees. I can't scream. I won't. I can't. He won't take me like that. You know, we all think that, Clara says from behind. I jumped. Some of us don't even make it to 1. They get so terrified before that he goes ahead and takes them early. He won't take me. I'm not afraid, I said belligerently. The countdown will hit 0, and I still won't be afraid, and then it will all be gone, right? I'll wake up, or realize it was all a joke, and I'll laugh, and oh. I won't laugh, no more laughing. But it'll all be over. I'll have passed, right? I don't know, she said thoughtfully. I don't think anyone has ever passed before. I thought I would, but then he came and I was afraid too. Afraid too? Or two? 2 or 2? I shouted at her, both sounding the same. Other children began to stare at me and point, but my voice kept getting louder. 2 or 2? 2 or 2? She laughed, not a hollow laugh but a good-natured one. See you on the other side, she said, and turned to go inside the building. Everyone else was inside now. If I walked in, then someone would say the final countdown, and he would come and take me. That was it. If I stayed out here, completely alone, then there would be no one to say the words. I just had to sit out here until it had all passed over. I just had to sit out here until I woke up. I walked alone to the playground, chill breeze lifting with the warming sun. I saw the kids running about the hall through the window, but they wouldn't find me. No one would find me out here. I was conscious of how loud my footfalls were on the wood chips by the swings, so I turned and hurried to the pavement as quickly as I could. But my heart was beating so loudly I was sure someone would hear it. Someone would find me and say the words, and it would be over. I tried my chest with my hands, but it wouldn't be still. God damn it, I wished it would stop beating. I pounded my chest in aggravation, wondering if I could find something sharp to silence it. I didn't think about it as killing myself then, I just wanted the damn thing to stop. I sat down on the curb, my hands clawing through my hair in aggravation. Maybe my ears. Maybe I could pull my ears off, and I wouldn't hear the final count. It wouldn't work if I couldn't hear it, right? He wouldn't be able to take me then. I grabbed my right ear with both hands and pulled so hard I thought it must come off, but then I cried out from the pain and let go. Had someone heard me? Would they come? My face felt so hot against the cool wind, my body was trembling, and I began to cry. No. Someone will hear. But the trembling built to shakes, and the shakes into convulsions, and before I knew it, I was sobbing out loud. I couldn't be alone forever. I had to make this stop. I wiped away my tears angrily and stood. Defiantly I yelled into the wind. 1. Are you happy now? I want to wake up. 12. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 0. Did you hear me? I heard the howling of the wind getting louder behind me. This was it. He was coming, and it would all be over. I said 0. The roar behind me was deafening. At last I couldn't hear my own heart anymore. 12. I shouted again. I said 12, and then I began to laugh. I felt a splitting pain in the sides of my mouth and I laughed even harder, knowing it was coming. Blood began gushing down my face as my maw distended horribly, and the laughter kept ringing out in even bursts. Rhythmic laughter, hollow laughter, like a broken toy. You might ask me why I laughed then, and I would tell you it was because I was afraid. You might not understand, but you will. I laughed because 12 was gone forever. I laughed because I was afraid of 11.